Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to colinslaststand.com. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode 129. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined, as always, by the internet's Chris Raygun. Chris, thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing okay. You know, it's same old every week.
Yeah,
you know?
Sure. Yeah, I can feel it. I hear it in your voice.
Yeah, it's really draining to just wake up in a box and just stay in that box the whole time.
Any new plans or anything to share with us that's not germane at all to this show?
Not that I can. I've just been working. You know, I've just been writing and editing a bunch. I'm trying to have a bunch of videos come out after Christmas, in that week. So I'm just kind of trying to do a weird blowout. But aside from that,
you also told me that you're recording all your podcasts at the same time for Snark Tank or whatever. It's that time. I think I'm doing 6 or 7 podcasts this week, which is a lot for me because I don't think you do either, but I don't roll into these shows. I have notes and preparation and stuff like that. So it's actually quite a lot to do in 1 week.
Yeah.
But you give everyone a little bit of a break, including Dustin, and we don't care about giving Dustin too much of a break, but just a little bit of a break. Now, Chris, I want to have an awkward conversation with you. I don't know how awkward it's going to be. It's really up to you how awkward it is.
Right.
I see here a tweet of yours from December 12th at 9:11 p.m. That's my time.
Mm-hmm.
It says, the only good selfies I took this year are the ones with my girlfriend, GF, or the ones when I'm intentionally hideous. Who is this young lady? Who is this young woman?
Well, this is a lady that I am seeing in New York, which is why I'm really kind of, I kind of want to go, to New York.
Yeah, sure.
This is pretty ideal.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I met her a year ago, and it's been pretty good. Aside from the fact that we're separated by a disease,
sure,
and a whole country. But aside from that, it's pretty golden.
Well, she's lovely, and I'm wishing you the very best in these endeavors.
Mm-hmm.
I'll continue to stalk your Twitter profile to find anything else that we might want to bring up on this show, and very much like a father and a son, you don't tell me very much about what's going on in your life. I have to really pick and choose.
My parents still don't know I live in Los Angeles, so
Oh, right. Well, that's good. Yeah, well, they'll figure it out. Maybe they won't figure it out because you'll hopefully be back in New York very soon. Well, thank you all out there for joining us on this episode of Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, our weekly PlayStation podcast. You can get it 3 days early and ad-free on Patreon at patreon.com/colinslaststand, like nearly 10,000 of you do. Come join us for other perks as well, including Sacred Symbols Plus, which is our weekly Patreon exclusive episode of this show, only for CLS patrons. Last week, we did a little over an hour on the Game Awards, but not the Game Awards per se. Chris and I rather talked about what we feel like would make better Game Awards and why we don't take them more seriously as an industry. I thought it was pretty constructive.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. So this coming week, I will do one by myself because people have been asking for just a mailbag. And I'm like, well, let's give everyone a couple weeks off. I'll do a mailbag and edit it and put it together myself. So that's what you guys have to look forward to next week. And of course, we also have other things like a Discord server, which people are really enjoying. I don't mention that enough. People really enjoy that Discord.
I got to make a habit of hopping into these. I have 3. I have 2 Discord servers if you want to count. If you want to count Sacred Symbols, I have a third one that I should be jumping into, but I just don't jump into it because Discord is so daunting to me, even having used it for years.
It's cool. I don't really quite understand it personally. I'm too stupid to understand it and old. So yeah, join us over there if you can. And we thank you, of course, for your kindness and generosity. Of course, happy holidays as well. This is going to go live for patrons a little earlier than Christmas, but around Christmas, a little before Christmas too, actually, for everyone else. But happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We will continue to roll on with episodes, but we've actually pre-recorded 2 episodes that will be going live over the next 2 weeks. So we hope you enjoy those. This will be the last episode we do for a few weeks where it's going to be newsworthy stuff. nothing's going to happen, I don't think, anyway. Maybe it will. If something crazy happens, we'll tap in, but otherwise we'll keep rolling. So episodes 130 and 131 will be here over the holidays. Please do enjoy them. Chris, I want to remind everyone, Habroxia 2 is my game that's coming out February 3rd, 2021. It's going to be on PS4 and Vita and elsewhere as well, Switch, Xbox One, and so on and so forth. But we are doing a physical version of the game on PS4 and Vita. So go check that out if you'd like at playasia.com. A few other notes here. Sackboy: A Big Adventure. The PS4 and PS5 game now has online multiplayer and cross-gen save support. If you're interested in that, I'm going to sit down and play that actually in the next week or two with Micah.
They got Team Deathmatch in there?
Yeah, Team Deathmatch would be awesome. I'd love that. And also this thing here that I didn't realize. So we were talking a lot about the Callisto Protocol last week, which is a game that's coming to PlayStation 5 from Striking Distance Studios, which is Glenn Schofield's studio. This is, OG Call of Duty guy. And I had totally forgotten, and it didn't come up in our conversation, that this game is being funded by the PUBG Corporation. Striking Distance, I think, is owned by PUBG Corporation, and the game takes place in the PUBG universe. That was just totally lost on me. I felt like I needed to say something about it.
Yeah, like I learned that, like, I think sometime after we recorded, and I remember just kind of being like, oh, I mean, all right. It's weird. Like, I saw a lot of people talking about that, and they were like, oh, this means it's going to be like a battle. Like, people take in the PUBG universe as will be battle royale for some reason. And it's like, that's not what that means. It just means it's just some arbitrary thing that they're trying to do to tie all their products together. It's still going to be, I presume it's probably still going to be a pretty solidly structured, like, survival horror game. Like, I don't see that game being a battle royale at all.
No, I don't either. And it isn't. And I agree with you. People need to kind of, I don't know, wrap their heads around, like you said, these guys doing other kinds of games. But this is the problem with naming yourself after your game. This is what I say about some of Microsoft studios as well. We're actually going to talk about that a little later as well. But I want to just throw that out there. The Callisto Protocol is in the PUBG universe. If you care, I will play it. I don't care about its connection to the PUBG universe. It's possible maybe it'll make me care. I don't know. Brandon Breland wrote into us on Patreon, just like you guys out there can, by supporting us. And he says, hey, Sicilian Colin and Puerto Rican Chris. Last week, Colin ordered Wawa, something I'd kill for out here in California, by the way, live on the podcast. However, he seemed reluctant to do so, saying, quote, well, you know what? We don't have to do this right now, end quote. Colin, I just figured I'd let you know that I hopefully speak for all of the audience. It's quite the proclamation. When I tell you that we love these random segments that you don't think would translate to entertainment for us, you express concerns all the time when you feel an off-topic conversation goes on for too long, or when you search for something online and fill in the airspace with remarks ranging from, oh, okay, that makes sense, to what the fuck is this? I've never heard of this. What is this? It's moments like these that give the show life and moments that are fun to go back to and listen to and diving back through the catalog of content. So, Colin, although I know you want well-edited experiences with your shows, just know it's all right to leave moments like these in, and that there's no need to apologize for them. Thanks for reading. And I hope the hoagie sandwich was everything you hoped it would be and more. The hoagie sandwich wasn't all I hoped it would be and more, by the way. I want to let you all know, since you want more of the story, you want more Colin stories.
Why was it not what you wanted it to be?
It never came. Like, they kept pushing the time back over and over again, and then, like, after an hour, I just canceled it.
Ah, that
sucks. So I also lost my money because I reached out to them. It was quite the indignity too, because I reached out. Do I have it still in my inbox? I might not. And they were basically like, sorry, we're not giving you your money back. They were already making the food. And then at the end, it's like, thank you for being a gold member.
Oh my
Uber
God.
Or whatever. And I was like, oh, go fuck yourself. So there you go. There's the continuation of that story. But I know a lot of you guys like the little quirks and weirdness of the show. I want to calibrate it. I don't want it to just be that, but yeah, I'll continue to order food on the show if that's what you'd like. I can do that for you. It's not a problem.
I might do it later.
Yeah, you should. You should. Robert Gray wrote into us. I was thinking a lot about this over the last week. He says, I also use my consoles to watch Netflix, Hulu, etc. The people now are telling you not to are crazy. My smart TV is super laggy. You know, I was becoming more angry about this the more I thought about it, because as people might remember, I was confronted about using my console to watch Netflix and all of that instead of using my smart TV. And I really have some sort of proclamation here, which might surprise some folks. But the reality is there's no way you're having a better experience on your smart TV than I am on PS4 or PS5 with using Netflix and Hulu and stuff.
Yeah.
Just the use of the D-pad and the X button and all that. There's just no way. There's no way you're beating it. I don't. I'm sticking or I'm putting the line in the sand here. I was gonna stick something else in the sand, but I don't want to do that.
Yeah. No, like I thought about this a lot too. And I actually made it a point. We have a smart TV in the living room that I don't really use all that much, but like I went to the living room and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna watch some Hulu or whatever. And it's so laggy. Like the remote is so unresponsive, and it's like a good TV. Like this isn't like some skimpy like like $300 like 4K 55 inch. This is like this is a pretty good TV. And it was still laggy, and like the experience was terrible. And it's like, yeah, of course I'm going to use my consoles. They're so much better for this.
I agree. I feel like some people were trying to dunk on me, and you know what? No, I'm blocking that ball. It's in the 6th row right now. It got knocked away like Shaquille O'Neal might have knocked away some sort of basketball shot.
Yes, I understand all this.
Don't try to dunk on me. Don't do it. Jennifer Luviano wrote into us. Says, hi, Colin and Chris. What chores did you guys hate doing as a child, or what chore do you despise doing now as an adult? I used to hate washing dishes, but it has become very therapeutic for me. Is there a chore that you have like a real like hesitance to do? You have a hatred for it deep inside of you?
No, I don't think so. Like I think when I was a kid, I hated like outdoor stuff, like yard work, like mowing the lawn or like or anything outside. Basically, because I was allergic to, I'm allergic to pollen, and in like upstate New York, where there's just like the trees are like it's woodsy. I think people think of New York as like just the city, and the city just like extends like through the entirety of the state, and it's just like no, the majority of New York is just like wilderness. And whenever I would go out to do like to mow the lawns or clear some of the weeds and shit, I would just be dying by the end of it. So I was like, nah, I hate this. I'm just not doing it. There was a point where I refused. I was just like, I'm not doing this. I'm sorry. And my parents were like, all right, well, it is killing him. So I guess he has a good reason not to do it. But I don't know, like washing dishes and like just cleaning and like vacuuming and like doing stuff like that. I never minded because I always kind of liked that, the process of just sort of like cleaning up the clutter and like having a nice looking space to just kind of exist in. That stuff never bothered me. I actually like washing dishes quite a bit, honestly.
Me too. And that's what Jennifer says as well. So I remember being a kid, I was the youngest of 4, and we had like chores that we all had to do every week. And I remember when I was like a little kid, when I was like incapable of doing anything in kindergarten or 1st grade, my job was to go around the house and like clean the baseboards and like the molding or whatever. And that was always so annoying, but I guess I don't like cleaning the bathroom, but
yeah,
I'm one of these people. I don't think this surprises anyone where, first of all, I've never lived with anyone, whether a roommate or a woman, where I want them to clean. It's like, I'll clean because I can only do it right. You know what I mean? Like only I'm going to do it right. You clean and I'm just going to clean over you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I actually just got done cleaning my house, and it's like an all day affair, literally an all day affair, but I need to do it right. And it needs to happen like that, like once every 2 months or so, where I go around and like really scrub every corner on my hands and knees and stuff. And then I'll do more like supplemental weekly or bi-weekly cleanings where I vacuum and sweep and mop the floor and clean everything down, dust everything down. But I totally understand what you're saying, because I like to have a clean and neat space as well. And I take pride in that. But the dishes I don't really wash anymore. I actually just use the dishwasher. I actually don't even have a dish rack. My counter is totally empty. It has no soap on it or anything. You have to there's soap underneath if you want it, but
oh yeah, so you use the dishwasher.
Yeah, I used to be anti-dishwasher, but now I'm pro-dishwasher.
No, yeah, I hate it. Yeah. I just don't think it does anything. Like I feel like I have to wash the dishes. Like I have to wash the dishes myself. I got to scrub it. Usually, like the second I'm done with my dishes, I wash them. So usually, like nothing really piles up for me. But I use the dishwasher as my dish rack, basically. Yeah, because that's
I see.
Yeah.
I knew someone that did that once. Yeah, I used to live with someone that did that.
Yeah, because like I just don't trust that thing to really clean anything. Like I trust me and my hands more than I trust this machine that's what is it? Just like spraying the dishes like a little bit. Like it's like a bidet for your dishes. Like nah. Like I gotta get in there.
You can watch some videos of them work. Yeah, it's like spinning water and jets and stuff like that. It's pretty interesting. But I totally hear you. I just feel like it's more efficient. I'm going for this real minimalist thing in my house too, where
that's fair. Yeah.
I don't want anything on the counters and everything like that.
Yeah.
And
I totally understand that, but like it's like I think about when I think of a dishwasher, I think of it like almost like a car wash, and like, hey, my car looks pretty good after I go out of the car wash, but I don't know if I would, put a burger on top of my car and like eat off it.
Would you put a burger on top of your car and eat it if you washed it yourself?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. All right. Well, that's interesting. Nonetheless, I don't even know what we were talking about here. Oh yeah, the washing dishes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer, for writing in. I like just keep it. Chris and I are of the same ilk, I think, where we like to keep things nice and clean and neat. I think I told the story on this show in the past that when I wasn't a little kid, I was in high school. There was like a brief period of time, like a few months, where I tried to be messier, like actively, because I noticed my friends had like their shit, like their clothes all over their room and food, and it just seemed cool. It was like, oh, it's like the way people are supposed to live, and I tried to do it and I couldn't. Like I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I had to put everything in the hamper and whatnot. Sometimes
my room will get messy if I'm like working a lot, and I'll be like, oh man, I really got to clean this, but it's never dirty. That's the thing. It's like I can handle messy, but not dirty. Like if you got clothes kind of strewn about, like that's just messy. That's fine. You just pick it up and put it somewhere else. But if I walk into somebody's room and it's like, oh, here's 2 plates of pasta that haven't been touched since Sam Raimi was making Spider-Man movies, then it's like, okay, well, this is a different breed of messy, to the point where it's just like, that's not okay.
Sure.
Clean your fucking dishes.
Clean yourselves up out there.
Jesus.
Yeah, geez. We were both thinking about scolding people at the same time. It's interesting. It's interesting. I didn't know that was going to happen. All right. Soiled Boxers wrote into us and said, hey guys, just finished episode 128 and something bothered me quite a bit. Chris mentioned Pizza Hut's creativity with their pies and gave an example of having hot dogs in the crust. My issue is that Colin just let this statement roll by. Just the thought of one long hot dog wrapped around the entire pizza makes me nauseous. Colin, for the good of the show, please scold Chris. Thanks.
No.
First of all, that's not what it is. I think it's more like the little hot dogs.
Yeah,
right?
It's like pigs in a blanket, kind of.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, it's not one long, just infinitely looping hot dog. That is
like
disgusting.
a 2.5 foot long hot dog. That is gross. It probably does taste good, but I don't want it.
Yeah, no, it's more of a pigs in a blanket, like kind of like a popper kind of thing, or at least from what I remember. Like I never actually had it. I just saw images of it. I don't really care that much for hot dogs unless it's like a dirty water like street dog, or if it's like being grilled, like on a proper barbecue. I'm not one to boil hot dogs, like it's just a sad time.
Yeah, it is kind of sad, isn't it? I don't boil them either often. I have in the past, but not recently. All right. Let's talk about the games that we've been playing, Chris. I'll throw it over to you. It says you've been playing Cyberpunk 2077. We'll talk more about everything that's going on with it, but you can talk about your experience playing it for now.
Yeah, so I feel pretty fortunate, honestly. I've been playing it on Series X. I heard that was a little bit more stable than the PS5. I'm not sure how real that is, but enough people told me that I was like, all right, I guess I'll just trust this. So I've been playing on Series X, and it's been pretty okay. It's frozen like I think 3 times for an awkwardly long period of time, like 7 to 10 seconds, but like after that, it usually comes back up and running and comes back alive again. So it's definitely not stable. It's definitely not finished. It definitely needs a little bit more time in the oven. But I really like it, man. Like this is like a really solid game, and I don't mean that in the way that like a lot of games that like release broken and get fixed later like have strong foundations. I mean like the parts here are really, really good. And I think it just needs a little bit more time to like smooth out the edges more than like, I don't know, No Man's Sky, which launched as like kind of just the foundation and nothing else. But yeah, it's a really immersive open world. They really nailed that cyberpunk genre and aesthetic. I've really been enjoying it. Like it's pretty good. It just sucks because I can't really recommend it. Like it's the first time in a while where it's like I've played a game that I really, really love and I really think is genuinely great, but I just can't advise anybody get it.
Right.
It's just weird.
Yeah, that is too bad. And that's the thing with this game, is that it does seem to be really contingent on where you're playing it.
Yeah.
I think some people are claiming that it works on PlayStation 4 fine and PS4 Pro fine. I think that maybe that's true for some people, but this seems to be more akin to something more dramatic, like what was going on with Elder Scrolls V when it came to PS3 back in the day in 2011. Although I would say that this is more serious just because of all the furor around it. The internet's different now than it was even 9 years ago when that game came out. It's actually closer to, I think, 10 years, which is kind of crazy. It's kind of nuts.
Yeah.
Time's flying by here. But we'll save all the Cyberpunk talk for just a moment.
Yeah.
Because we will get into that in the news. I've been playing 2 games. Brigandine, The Legend of Runerzia. Still can't really say that, but struggle with that word for some reason. But it's a game I talked about last week in our Interesting Games segment, where I was talking about its strategic role-playing game kind of bona fides, and I sat down and played it. First of all, the tutorial is like really detailed, and I'm glad I played it because the tutorial, because I was about to just jump into a match, like into a game, and see, and you only play against the computer, and see what it is. And it's interesting because this game is actually 2 games, and I didn't really realize it. It's part Risk or Axis and Allies or something like that, which are games that I really love. And then it's part strategy role-playing game, like tactical grid-based role-playing game, like your Front Missions or your Final Fantasy Tactics or whatever. And so you're doing both of these things, and it's interesting, and it seems like it's highly playable. Like there are 6 different kingdoms you can play as, and it's like one huge continental map, and you're just basically trying to take over fortresses until you conquer the entire thing. And there are like lots of characters, and it's very Japanese and very verbose, actually. I think a little too verbose, if anything, but it's an interesting game. People should go check it out. I think it might be a little expensive at $40, but that's what I spent on it. You might disagree, so check that one out. And the other game that I'm playing is actually a game that came to PS4 and Vita and PS3, I think, in 2019. I think it might be the last PS3 release, as I recall, which is a game from VBlank in Canada called Shakedown Hawaii. And I didn't end up playing it. I must admit, I was kind of turned off by it because it didn't have a platinum trophy, which I thought was weird because it is an open world game, like a Grand Theft Auto style game.
Yeah.
But it's just pixelated and whatever. And so it randomly came to PlayStation 5. Like, they announced it was coming to PS5, and then it was available like a couple of days later, and they added a platinum trophy to it with like a whole new trophy list. So I finally sat down and played this game, and it's awesome. It's really, really great. It's interesting. It's kind of got like this Smash TV type vibe to it, and it moves really fast. There are like a few hundred missions, but the missions move like you're done with a mission in like a couple of minutes, and then you're just into the next mission. And there are like a shit ton of cutscenes, and they're really crisp and quick. And the music's awesome. It's got like a Hotline Miami type vibe to it. It's basically about like a business, like an aging businessman in Hawaii who has kind of just relaxed on his laurels for many years, and his businesses are failing. And so he has to go out and be like a criminal and start like running rackets and taking businesses over. And so that's the other thing, is that it's also like a management game where you're managing businesses and buying like storefronts and generating income and paying yourself and stuff. It's a pretty deep and interesting game, and it reminds me a lot of ActRaiser, which is a game that I really love on SNES, where it is multiple games that don't really seem to fit together, that actually fit together really nicely. It's part twin stick shooter, it's part arcade driver. It's interesting. So I really highly recommend it. Shakedown Hawaii. If you already own it on any of the other platforms on PlayStation, you already have it on PS5 for free. And I actually bought Shakedown Hawaii just to support them when it came out, so I got it for free. So highly recommended. And it's not what you're probably looking to play on PS5 right now, considering it looks like an NES game, but I like it quite a bit. D-Hall82 wrote into us and says, "Hey CNC, I got to give a shout out to Immortals Phoenix Rising. I wanted a new game, but decided to wait for the PS5 version of Cyberpunk, so I booted up Immortals, and I was pleasantly surprised. I'm really digging this game. It has a very whimsical and lighthearted aesthetic, and the combat is really fun. The bright colors absolutely pop off the screen. It wears its Breath of the Wild inspirations on its sleeve. As somebody who didn't care for Breath of the Wild, I feel Immortals brings just enough new mechanics into the fold to keep me involved. I know Chris said he downloaded it last week, but didn't get to play much. If either of you guys decide to put aside Cyberpunk, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this game." So yeah, we talked about this last week, and interestingly, Chris, a few people wrote in to recommend it.
Yeah.
I was looking a little bit more into it per your recommendation and others, and just the conversation surrounding it. And I think it will be the next game I play. I want to finish Shakedown Hawaii. Then I really should finish Final Fantasy VII Remake. And then I think I'm going to download that game and give it a go over the holidays. So
yeah, I have it downloaded. I just haven't started because I just knew that Cyberpunk was coming out. It's like, I gotta get through that. I know if I put Cyberpunk down like right now, I'm just gonna start Immortals and then I'm gonna not remember what the fuck I was doing in Cyberpunk. So it's like, I just gotta finish this and then Immortals will be the next thing that I want to kind of jump into, because yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about it, and even just the negative stuff that I hear about it doesn't even seem like stuff that particularly would bother me. So I'm looking forward to it.
Right on. All right. Let's see here. It's time to get into the news.
Alrighty.
Hey, it's me. I'm just recording this really quick, cutting in. We've already recorded the show. It's been sent off to Dustin. Just sending him this pickup because there's some new information about what we're about to talk about. I wanted you all to have the most accurate and up-to-date information possible. So Cyberpunk 2077 is available for refund now, according to Sony. They have a website, playstation.com/en-us/cyberpunk-2077-refunds. If you're interested, they're linking out to it via their Ask PlayStation Twitter account, and I'm sure elsewhere. The website says in part, quote, SIE strives to ensure a high level of customer satisfaction. Therefore, we will begin to offer a full refund for all gamers who have purchased Cyberpunk 2077 via PlayStation Store. SIE will also be removing Cyberpunk 2077 from PlayStation Store until further notice. So look at our conversation that's to follow through that lens. We didn't have this information at the time. I'm not sure it's really germane to most of what we talk about, but it's certainly important to a part of what we talk about. And so there you have it. The game's being taken off of the PlayStation Store. Refunds will be widely available for digital purchasers, it looks like. So go to that website or just click around and you'll find it pretty easily online. Just wanted you to have the details since the next couple of episodes are going to be holiday episodes, and I didn't want this news to just linger in the wind out there. So anyway, back to the normal show. Enjoy. Thanks for your patience. Let's get into this first piece of big news that everyone wants to talk about. We got most of the letters submitted to the show this week are all about this, and we'll spend a lot of time talking about it. But I tried my hardest to wrap this up as succinctly as possible. It's not very succinct, but here's the best effort I can give it. Number one, Cyberpunk 2077 isn't the game many people were expecting. In fact, if you're playing it on PlayStation 4 or even PS4 Pro, you're more likely than not having a noticeably subpar experience, with those playing on PS5 via backwards compatibility finding a far more stable and playable game. There's a lot to this story, but at the nexus of it are the last-gen versions of CD Projekt's eagerly anticipated and long-developed RPG, both on PS4 and Xbox One. It seems that media and influencers only got access to the PC build of the game, creating an aura of pre-release hype, particularly when reviews dropped, that simply didn't reflect the product people were playing on console. In a letter to the audience, CD Projekt's leadership team said in part, quote, "We would like to start by apologizing to you for not showing the game on base last-gen consoles before it premiered, and in consequence, not allowing you to make a more informed decision about your purchase. We should have paid more attention to making it play better on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One," end quote. As such, constant patching is already underway, as players of the game have no doubt noticed. However, two larger patches for the PS4 iteration of the game will follow, one in January and the other in February. In terms of these patches, CD Projekt writes in part, quote, "Together, these should fix the most prominent problems gamers are facing on last-gen consoles, ellipsis. They won't make the game on last-gen look like it's running on high-spec PC or next-gen console, but it will be closer to that experience than it is now," end quote. As such, CD Projekt has been encouraging those who don't want to wait for fixes to seek a refund, but there's a problem there too, specifically if you bought it digitally. And that problem is none other, and not surprisingly, Sony. Sony's digital return system is notoriously non-responsive, and for most people, it's not even worth trying. But some did reasonably infer from CD Projekt's letter that they had some sort of understanding with PlayStation, something later dispelled. It seems contacting the publisher directly may be the best way. Not surprisingly, a planned reveal and rollout of Cyberpunk 2077 DLC support has been indefinitely delayed as the developer seeks to fix the game. In an emergency investors meeting about the botched launch of the game, co-CEO Adam Kaczynski said in part, quote, "We'll do everything possible to prove that we stick to our values. We truly hope that our efforts will let us rebuild the trust we have lost," end quote. This is notable since Kaczynski said in the same discussion in part, quote, "We ignored signals about the need for additional time to refine the game on the base last-gen consoles. It was the wrong approach against our business philosophy," end quote. In other words, CD Projekt realizes it may have irreparably damaged its sterling reputation, one it only earned in recent years. Still, it may not be that damaging to them. CD Projekt revealed that the entire cost of development and marketing of the game have been recouped. They are now completely in the black on the title. Individual developers at the studio shouldn't be blamed for this mess, nor are they. Bloomberg reports that CD Projekt's entire bonus structure, which was contingent on Metacritic scores, will now be free of critical reception. So that's everything, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
That sounds about right.
So here's the situation as I see it. I feel like there's no way that CD Projekt couldn't have known that the game wasn't running well. And
yeah,
I'm wondering, taking aside your feelings on playing the game and enjoying it on your Xbox Series X, which is awesome, and a lot of people are enjoying the game. I don't want to take away from the nature of the game itself. I think it looks awesome. I'm excited to play it. I will wait, as I said last week, before this even broke out. I said I was going to wait for the PS5 iteration. So that's still the goal. But how do you feel about this whole thing?
Well, I think it's not really acceptable. You know, like, I don't think it's they're clearly aware that the game does not run well on base PS4 and Xbox One, and they were clearly aware of that probably throughout the entirety of development, to be quite frank. And I know we just mentioned this in an episode we just recorded with Dustin. I don't know if that's gone out yet based on the timing of things, but
it hasn't, by the way.
Oh yeah. Well, I just feel like you can't expect everybody who's excited about your game to kind of have this kind of base intrinsic knowledge about the industry and what will logically run on what. Like, I think it's pretty clear that most people who like follow the industry and who are, you know, very knowledgeable about the industry saw Cyberpunk running 2 years ago, and just from the footage alone could tell you, yeah, this is a next generation game. No way a PS4 or Xbox One is going to run that. I remember saying that back in the day. I remember thinking that really vividly, like, oh, this is a next generation game. And when I heard that these games were coming to PS4 and Xbox One, I was like, oh, well, that's probably not going to be good then, is it? So if I was able to notice that, then there's no way they didn't. And just because people get sucked into the marketing cycle and who, you know, they see this game running and they're promised this experience on PS4 and Xbox One, just because they believe that, you know, that's not their fault. That's the fault of the studio for false advertising, basically. I think there's a refund. There's a reason why even CD Projekt is saying, you know, refunds are probably something you should seek out, because even they know that this is just out of pocket.
So speaking to this, I wanted to begin with this letter from Tony Rivera. And again, a lot of people wrote into us. We can't use all of your letters, of course, any week, but this week especially because so many people wanted to say the same thing. So yeah. I tried to select as many as I could here. He says, a dubious hello to the throbbing three. Well, Dustin isn't here right now, but he says, hope you are doing well. I came to you feeling a bit melancholic for my favorite Polish devs at CD Projekt today. They had to succumb to a humble apology and offer refunds for releasing a game that ran poorly on base last-gen consoles. My question to you is this truly the fault of developers lacking the awareness to output a great product on all hardware available, which comes out to be 8 versions or more if my count is right? Or is this merely a situation where a developer is caught in the crossfire trying to deliver something that is not feasible in a console generation divided by horsepower? Should Sony and Xbox not have made the bridge consoles in the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X, this problem seemingly would not have happened. Cyberpunk would have most likely been a flagship next-gen launch title, but instead, CD Projekt now has become the target of vindictive criticism when the broad audience of critics should inherently understand that this game is heavily influenced by demanding hardware. It's a tough debate, but I feel that Sony and Microsoft introducing a console upgrade within a generation has alienated a lot of their player base, and now we see it impacting a big release like Cyberpunk. Who is really to blame? Thanks for all you do, gents. Take care and stay safe. I wanted to read Tony's comment because I feel like we have to start at the very top, at least in my opinion, and I don't know if you agree, Chris, is we can't deflect blame. This is CD Projekt's fault. This is no one else's fault.
Yeah.
But CD Projekt's. And I'm really surprised by anyone that would defend what they did. I don't think you have to attack people that worked on the game, but certainly people knew. And you know what's one of the peculiar things? I was thinking about this, and I don't know if anyone's been talking about it elsewhere, but in all of the leaks, like people at CD Projekt have been readily talking to people at Kotaku and Polygon and Bloomberg for some time about the working conditions there, but never seemed to come up that the game wasn't running right. And it makes you wonder how much the people in the trenches even knew about the full state of the game, because you have a team of many hundreds of people working in a COVID situation where they're basically sending their pieces and parts probably through producers and pipelines where they might not even really see the game running. And no, so I found that weird. That was one thing that stuck out to me, was that no one was saying like, hey, we're working really hard to finish this game. It's really untenable, these working conditions. And by the way, the game is fucked. There was never that third part.
Yeah.
Right? Am I crazy? Am I misremembering?
No, I don't know. I can't pretend to know how development works. My assumption is that they build it for the PC and then it kind of just gets scaled down appropriately depending on, what variables are needed to be running. And my assumption is that probably a smaller team of people are in charge of like implementing those features into earlier or less powerful hardware to ensure that it runs. But I really don't know that. That's just my assumption. I agree though. Like I just don't think there's any way to shift the blame onto Microsoft or Sony for this. There are plenty of games that are cross-gen, plenty of late generation PS4 and Xbox One titles that look great and run great. There are plenty of PS5 titles out right now that look great and run great. This is a CD Projekt problem, and yeah, I'm sure that this is a very intensive game. I said it before, but I think this is going to be the new Crysis. This is going to be the thing. It's like, hey, can your PC run CD Projekt's Cyberpunk 2077 well? It's a benchmark PC title. I understand there's a lot of innovation going into it, but like I just said, like you and I understand that this game is going to require a lot of power, and you and I understand that you couldn't really expect a good experience on previous generation hardware. Like I think that's something that anybody who's involved in the industry understands, but the majority of people aren't involved in that way. The majority of people see a trailer for a game they think looks pretty cool because it was showcased as essentially a next-gen PC title running on current-gen hardware, and they see that and they're like, wow, I guess if they're telling me this, then I guess my Xbox One or PS4 can run this and I'm excited to play it. And they're not thinking about, what the GPU is or what the CPU usage is or how much RAM is required to make this thing run as well, or even if ray trace reflections, is that possible on Xbox One? They don't know. They don't even know what ray tracing is probably. So it's a false advertising issue, in my opinion. And they might have made a fantastic game, but I mean, there was no reason to release this on base PS4 and Xbox One if this was the state of the game, and they knew it. So I don't know I don't know how you could possibly shift the blame away from them. I don't think it's vindictive criticism. I think it's totally reasonable criticism.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's an interesting thing because I don't know that this is over in terms of if they're going to be sued or if there's going to be some sort of class action suit against them for certain things. And people, I'm sure, are pouring through everything they've said to the media. And this is a pretty serious situation for them. And I don't want to oversell that, but I don't want to undersell it either. I don't want people to think they're going to come back from the holidays and this is going to be like, well, the January patch is out now and now things are moving forward. I mean, that's possible, but I think it's just as likely that this really permanently stains CD Projekt. And even though they'll move past it, like Bethesda is permanently stained from a lot of shit too, but people still love Bethesda. And I think people will still love CD Projekt, but it's kind of shitty for them because they worked really hard to kind of earn this really sterling, respectable reputation in the industry. And we're looked at as kind of the guys that finally out Bethesda with Witcher 3. And they already have really damaged, and like I said, maybe irreparably, their reputation with this. Because even if the game ends up being great, they still were so woefully mismanaged. It really makes me wonder, especially because this is a publicly traded company in Poland, if there's going to be some need to pull people off of the leadership team and fire people, because the board can demand that. The board can demand that of any company that is publicly traded if they vote to do so. And I feel like that's something that's going to happen. Someone fucked up, and someone or a group of people were hiding things. And I imagine it is a group of people, some sort of cabal at the top of the company that is directing whether these things should come out or not. And I wanted to throw in, and I did, Chris, the notion that it wasn't like I tore through their financials to find it. They announced in a press release that they made all of their money back.
Yeah.
So this is a pretty serious thing where they weren't in, because there was some theory, and I said this too in terms of money. I'm like, maybe they're having a hard time kind of holding on at the size they are. They need revenue, and they don't have really a publisher to work through anymore. No one's funding this game. They're funding it themselves. So that could have been one thing, but they made all their money back. They are liquid, and it makes you wonder why they didn't just delay the game if that were the case and delivered it in February or March. It seems like they're going to need all of February to fix it. So you feel, it seems like this would have been like a March release. Yeah. And it is a little stranger. It's like, no, we got our game out. We rushed it and got it out December 10th. And it's like, cool, dude. And it's all fucked up. So I don't know. That we also can't forget that the game went gold and then was delayed, which never happens. And I did say on the show that was a sure sign that there's something wrong, or at least the people that are getting discs of this game are going to get the version of the game from 2 months ago, which they did. Yeah.
We were saying pretty immediately that like the base PS4 and Xbox One versions, especially on disc, are going to be fucked. I don't know, man. This is just I just don't like it when the responsibility is like kind of thrown onto the consumer for not seeing through false advertising. Like I don't like that. It's just not really fair, you know? Just because like we're involved in this industry and we like kind of like understand these things doesn't mean like the majority of people who are going to be playing this game understand that.
Dennis Johnson wrote into us on Patreon. Says, "Sup fellas, so what's worse? All the hype articles about Cyberpunk or all the articles bashing the base PS4 and Xbox One SKUs? It's gotten beyond laughable at this point. The industry couldn't help but report on every overtime hour coming out of CD Projekt Red, and now every single bug in the game is under fire. Yes, CD Projekt hid last-gen console footage for a reason that was clearly a shitty move on their part, but come on, when will this stop? Is it me, or is it just a bit strange to come after a dev for crunch and then turn around and destroy them for a buggy game? It seems like you can't have both. Be safe, and thanks for all you guys do." What? I was interested in Dennis. What?
Wait,
sorry.
I don't even think I understand what this question or this comment is.
What he's saying is that people were attacking them for working too hard, right? And trying to finish the game and like make the best game possible in this kind of really rigorous, and at least this is how I understand it, Dennis. Maybe I'm misunderstanding you. And they were in this really dire situation and everyone was writing about that. And now the game's fucked up and everyone's writing about that. And those two things do seem to kind of conflict, because imagine the state of the game if these people didn't crunch on it. It would have been totally fucked up. So I actually get what Dennis is saying. I think that these things are kind of dissonant with each other, but I don't think it's I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, I don't think I agree. I think there's obvious like crunching, like I think crunch is like a very nuanced topic. I think there's crunch in everything, but then there's examples of crunch that are just obviously like egregious. I think Halo 2 is like one of the most like famous examples of like they were just crunching for like 11 straight months, and like people like slept in the studio, and it was just not a good situation. Like people, even the higher ups and people who were involved in that in Bungie at the time afterwards were like, yeah, we're never, that was not good. No one was happy about this. This was bad. So there are degrees of crunch that are acceptable, and then there are degrees of crunch that are just egregious and not okay. And I don't think criticizing that is inherently like just wishing for them to just, I don't see this as conflicting at all, because there are plenty of studios who don't crunch to this degree and also don't release buggy messes. You know, Hades came out, and Hades is a critical darling. They know famously, like that studio is actually like really good about avoiding crunch entirely, and they've put out nothing but stellar shit. And I don't know, I think you can have a problem with both of these things and it not be like this hypocritical thing.
Yeah, shout out to Supergiant. They do have a good reputation in the industry for treating their people well. Yeah, I wanted to read Dennis's comment because I do understand what he's saying. I don't know if he's saying it eloquently, but I think what he's saying is like the media is going to write, as the media does, I guess. The media is going to write about anything, and it seems like they're willing to write anything that's damaging to the game. But I think the reason I wanted to read what Dennis said, going back to what I was saying just a moment ago, was I feel like the media is responsible for this in some way. And this goes back to what I've been saying for a long time, which is hype machines are really damaging. I don't understand them. I don't get it. And I haven't really ever gotten it. And being inside the industry for so long, it was really confusing. I hated writing previews. I hated previewing games. I made that known. The more let's say powerful at IGN or whatever I became, or the higher I climbed up the ladder, the more comfortable I became. I let it to be known that I didn't want to do this kind of coverage. And this was the reason, was just because it's a game. And I don't mean it's a video game. I mean to the developers and the PR people and the marketers and the publishers, it's a fucking game. How can we spin this to make it look as good as possible, knowing, as I say over and over again on this show, that games make their money in the first 7, 14, 21 days, if they're lucky. That's why a game like Immortals Phoenix Rising, which we brought up earlier, is already discounted, because it's already failed. It's done. And I understand that need and that want to make your money back, but it is coming off strangely. And I do wonder if this wasn't CD Projekt, but a studio that had no cachet with the audience, and they tried to pull some shit like this, it would be a very different thing. And so I think that all of the carnage we're seeing about CD Projekt is earned. I think it should be aimed entirely at the people at the top, and it is being aimed there. And I think that it's pretty crazy how violent it is, let's say, how violent the response is, considering how big CD Projekt is and how much people love them. And so you can only imagine if it was someone else that did this. And it just seems like a year of people being mad at developers, but it's a reminder of why you should keep your powder dry, and why when things like this happen is when you should quote unquote attack, as opposed to, say, wasting your time attacking Naughty Dog for putting women in their, a woman in their game that you think is a transgender person.
Yeah. No, that I would agree with. Yeah.
So it's a really solid reminder of speaking with your wallet. I really don't believe in pre-order culture. I especially do not understand pre-order culture in this era of digital games. And this is just a reminder. Your money is so important. I know you guys know that. 60, 70 bucks, 60, 70, 80 pounds, depending on where you are, euro. Man, I don't know. Let this just be a reminder of why maybe rushing in is not always a good idea, and why you should show a little bit of restraint as a consumer, because CD Projekt it's impossible to teach CD Projekt the ultimate lesson. They already made their money back. The lesson cannot be taught. It's a real shame.
Yeah.
It's a real shame. I haven't given them any money yet. I haven't bought the game. So I will when the time comes, but I didn't do it. I don't know, but I didn't think it was going to be this bad. I just didn't think it was going to be like this. So Jimmy Two-Face wrote in. Said, well, lads, CD Projekt Red apologized for not allowing footage of the console versions of Cyberpunk to be shown in reviews prior to release. Does this apology really mean anything? They knew exactly what they were doing by not allowing footage to be released. Very easy to now turn around and give it an empty apology. I don't think they regret their embargo. There was no way they could allow it to be shown in the state it currently was on PS4. What are your thoughts? So, Chris, what do you think about Jimmy's inquiry here? Does the apology matter? Have they affected... Let's take it as it is. The damage is done. Mm-hmm. All right. So now we're starting from this point. Is CD Projekt making the right moves?
I mean, the moves that they're making are as right as the moves that they could make. I guess an apology is fine. Announcing that there's going to be, patches in the coming months for the base versions of these machines is all well and good. I think there does need to be a little bit more of you're going to need more than this, though, at a certain point, because there are people who just bought this game's running at 15 frames a second on PS4 and Xbox One in some cases. And
that's unplayable.
It is unplayable. It's just not, that's not an acceptable thing to release at all. So beyond this, I think they're at a point now where they're like, hey, listen, man, the DLC that we have planned, it's got to be free. You can't sell people a game that's this broken this early before.
I like that.
It has to be. At least one big piece of DLC needs to be free if this is going to be the route that they're going to go. Because an apology, like Jimmy said, they obviously did it intentionally, and on some level, I get from a creative standpoint, because you have this game that you've made on PC that is staggeringly impressive, and you're like, look at what we made, dude. This is so cool. This is the game we made. We're not lying by showing this off. This is the experience that we have that we've spent a lot of time creating for people, and it's unlike a lot of things that exist right now. It's really cool. It's really unique. I'm really proud of this. I want to show this. So, like, I get that, but all they really needed to do, and I think they could have, honestly, I think they could have launched this thing as broken as it was, and people would have given them a chance to, like, fix it, because that's kind of like a story now. You know, that's just kind of like the redemption arc story of, like, No Man's Sky or Rainbow Six Siege or all these other countless other games that were way more incomplete content-wise, I would say, than Cyberpunk currently is. And those became, like, beloved games and beloved examples of games that really turned their horrible launches around. But the thing is, I don't think those games hid the overall quality of the experience in the way that CD Projekt did. They definitely portrayed the PS4 and Xbox One versions as high-end PC versions. And No Man's Sky had an embargo, sure. That's also shitty and not great. But when the game was released and reviewed, it was reviewed for what it was, at the very least. And at the very least, that's the case with a lot of these games. Like, you know, they come out unfinished and they're like, hey, man, it's time for me to review this game, and it's not finished. 7 out of 10, 5 out of 10, whatever. But this was like, oh, this is a 9 out of 10. Oh, wait, it's actually a 4. You know, like, the drastic difference in quality, I think, makes it different alone. And I think they could have avoided it if they were just honest about the versions. Like, hey, listen, man, this is a high-end benchmark title. This is a next-generation game. And we want people on previous gens to have an experience with it, but it's just a fucked game. And we're going to work to fix it, but this is not the ideal way to play. And I think if they were just upfront and honest about that, they would have made less money, maybe, yeah. But I also think the majority of the damage that has been done to their reputation wouldn't have been done.
Well, let's focus, since we've, I think, indicted effectively CD Projekt on this charge of, or these many charges of just being reckless with their own game. I want to also dig deeper on something I said a little bit earlier, which was, how complicit are we as players? And Landon Reich wrote into us about this and says, how's it going, boys? I don't usually write into the show, but this week something has been really bothering me. All this talk about Cyberpunk and the hate being thrown at CD Projekt Red. First off, I want to say I think the game released in an unacceptable condition, and they clearly were not totally transparent about the quality of the game on release, and they should be held accountable. But at the same time, I can't shake the feeling that gamers need to take their own accountability with this stuff as well. Nobody forced a single person to buy or pre-order the game day one without seeing any gameplay, or real gameplay. I think the gaming community needs to look at themselves a little bit and stop buying into marketing hype for a game that they haven't played yet, then blaming the developer for their own bad decisions. If you couldn't wait 1 or 2 days to see how it runs on your base PS4, I think you share a little blame. Am I wrong? That being said, I'm about 30 hours into the game on PS5 and loving it, even with the bugs and crashes. Well, I disagree a little bit with what Landon's saying here, where the developer, as we already established, should be blamed for this. But yeah, I do like what Landon's saying here, Chris, and it's something I'm interested in your opinion on, which is, I just feel like we are in an industry and in a group of enthusiasts that just can't help themselves. And I don't know how many times I have to say on this show that the only language that any of these companies care about is money, and thus the only way you're going to effectively be able to communicate with them and injure them or force change is to not give them money. And the fact that they sold 8 million copies sight unseen, it's just like not something you really see in a lot of other industries. It's not even something that's possible in a lot of other industries. Usually they have to show you something. Usually you're going to, it could be a live performance or something like that, but it's very unusual for someone to say, like, I'm making this thing, it's $70, give it to me, give me your $70 now, I'll give you the game later. Going to be virtually impossible for you to get your money back. And I don't know, I do feel what Landon's saying here, where I just wish players would just be a little more patient. What do you think? I can't help but feel like this opinion wouldn't be here if it was like EA. You know, I get it. The consumer does bear some responsibility in kind of doing research and like figuring things out for themselves. But I mean, like I said, CD Projekt, you know, they portrayed the game as something that it wasn't. So like, even if you did your research prior to these new reviews coming out, like you wouldn't really have the necessary information. And
I don't know. Like, I don't think it's the customer's fault that the game is broken, which is ultimately the big issue. And yeah, there's like a hype machine, and like I get it. Like I didn't buy into the hype, but I still bought it, because I mean, on the next gen machines, they're actually like far more playable and I think far more acceptable versions. But I don't know. Like I generally don't like putting the blame on the consumer as a point of principle. Although obviously, yeah, hype culture does contribute to this kind of thing and does let companies get away with a lot.
It's too bad. It sucks. And the only way we can't affect the change that we want now, but it just needs to create a trend to affect the change in the future. And the longer we go without being able to affect that change in the present, then we're just going to continue to have problems like this. So it is a frustrating cycle that we find ourselves in. And I don't know how to make anyone else break out of it. It's something that we have to do collectively or not at all. And frankly, it's probably just not going to happen. People are going to continue to buy and consume shit sight unseen. And to the point that was made earlier, then your disappointment is kind of rings on deaf ears for me. But nonetheless, we'll talk about it. And that's not, of course, everyone. That's some people.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
But there are some questions that I think this brings up as well about the whole system of buying digital games, especially through PlayStation. Jonathan Barnett wrote into us and said, "Hey, CNC, after a really shitty launch on last-gen consoles, CD Projekt has welcomed refunds for the game. I'm pretty sure many people blissfully unaware of these issues are going to buy the game and be disappointed." Just like Chris said, and the patch is supposed to fix most of the issues aren't coming until January and February. Should Sony and Microsoft just pull Cyberpunk from their online stores? How did this game even get past certification in the first place? Thanks. So to answer his last question first, certification really only looks at certain things. They're literally checking boxes. So like, are there any trademark infringements? Does the game crash the console? Does the game brick the console? Like that's literally what they're looking for. They don't give a fuck about anything else. And that's certification. So that's how it made it through.
That is crazy though. Like there's no way that a game should be certified if it runs at 15 frames a second, Like that's
I agree.
That is as disruptive, or maybe not as disruptive just based on the inherent nature of like what we're talking about, but like to me, like bricking a console is probably like the worst thing that could possibly happen. But I mean, like a game running at like 15, like it's gonna get you sick. It's literally like a hazard at that point. It's like, oh my god, this is disgusting. It's just, I feel like even just an old fogey who's never even seen a video game can look at like a game running at 15 frames a second and understand that it's just not okay.
What's with this frame rate, Sonny?
I can't even imagine an old person saying frame rate, but like even there would be like, oh man, this hurts my eyes, like or something. Like I just that should definitely be a point in certification. At the very least.
I mean, I agree. And certification is a mysterious thing. Like we in the original version of Twin Breaker, we actually had at the beginning of the game, there's like a pixelated logo of Lily Mo and then a pixelated CLS logo. The CLS logo was originally the Sacred Symbols logo, and we had to pull it out of the game because it got caught in certification. Because it's their trademark technically, those buttons. So that's the kind of stuff that they're most curious about, I think, and like did the saves work and did the trophies pop and stuff. So just to answer that, I mean, that's how it made it through. And this is something that I think Sony and Microsoft and others need to now look at as well. But do you think that the game should be pulled from storefronts until it's fixed?
I don't know. It's a little tricky because, oh man, I really don't know, because it gets tricky specifically when we're talking about the next gen machines, because PS5 has its own storefront, but Xbox Series X has a storefront that is, because it's so backwards compatible, it is in part the same storefront. So like there's no change and there's no difference. I would argue that like if you could pull it from PS4, you should, but like I don't know if they could really pull it from like Xbox One without pulling it from Series X, and I don't think it's broken enough to pull from the next gen, Like the next gen has issues and it's definitely not like ideal, but it's definitely like a completely different story. It's like a different level of broken to the degree where like if you could manage to pull it from one platform in the family of platforms, maybe you should. I do think Xbox One and PS4 are unacceptable versions. Like, and they probably should be pulled. But I wonder if they could even do that,
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. And some people are saying, like, because even CD Projekt goes out of its way to kind of keep saying, like, base PS4, but Are the PS4 is the PS4 Pro running it that much better?
No,
I don't think it is. I don't know.
I've looked into it. It doesn't look like it's running it that much better. Like it's better than what you get on base, because base is just egregious, right? And PS4 Pro and Xbox One are still egregious, but in comparison to the base models, they don't seem as egregious just because the bar is so low. I still think, yeah, like Xbox One X and PS4 Pro are still probably should not be available. But then there's a weird thing. The weird thing that I always come back to, right? Like Grand Theft Auto 5 on 360 and PS3 ran at like 25 frames a second, you know, and it was like kind of unstable, and people were just kind of okay with it. And that game stayed on the storefront. So, like, I'm always just wondering, like, oh, man, like, what degree of broken or non-functional does something have to be to warrant getting pulled? Because obviously, like, frame rate is a big deal to me. Like, that's something that I'll notice before anything almost. I'll be like, okay, well, is this on game mode? Is this 60 frames? Is this 120 hertz? I'm going to notice that. But your average person apparently was just totally fine playing a Grand Theft Auto game at, like, 20 frames a second. Like, not even, like, 10 years ago. So it's like, I don't know. Like, is it fair for somebody who doesn't care about that stuff to not be allowed to play a game, especially in a system where they're not even really capable of reliably getting their hands on a next generation machine, even if they could afford it? There's a lot of questions that need to be asked, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And I think you're right. I think it kind of comes down to, like, the bell can't really be unrung. And it's very rare, exceedingly rare for a game to be stripped from the PSN. And it's usually because of some sort of licensing issue. I think there are a couple of games that have been, like, truly broken. And there was that one game where, like, you could pop a platinum trophy in like 20 seconds and they took that one down. But that goes to show you that game got through certification. You know, that game made it through certification, and then they pulled it down later because they didn't realize somehow. And this is let me not get ahead of myself, because this really goes to a greater question of how Sony itself and others, again, can adjust to this new reality of digital refunds and games not running right. And Jonathan Guzman wrote into us about this. He says, "Hey, boys, can we talk about how horrible the refund policies are with Sony? CD Projekt Red is allowing refunds for Cyberpunk 2077, and quite a few customers are being denied the refund due to them opening the game." So he means when you download it and you start it. Do you guys think with the whole Cyberpunk controversy, Sony might start looking into a possible refund policy similar to Steam? Or is there too much money on the line for any game to be refundable after the set amount of time? No, I think that they need to do something like Steam does. I'm a little confused why it's not more automatic. I don't know if it has to be. I think Steam is something like you can play the game for like an hour or something like that.
No, I think, well, from what I recall back when this was first implemented, I think it was like 2 hours. Like you had 2 hours to play the game and decide whether or not you want to do refunded or not, and it seems to work pretty well over there. I think in implementation, I don't know if that's necessarily a great idea, because there's a lot of games that are like really short, that you could just beat and just be like, well, I finished this, I guess I just don't need to pay for it anymore. I think it should maybe be based on percentage, or maybe you get like a trial. I've been saying this for a while, where like you get like a trial. You should be able to trial a game.
Yeah, that would be cool,
especially in an era where, you know, performance is key, and like, you know, like you really want to see how something's going to run before you plop down $60-$70 for something.
They have to do something. I agree with you. 2 hours is too liberal. I think even an hour is too liberal, but there has to be a way to reverse it. It's just weird that they say like, well, they probably see on their server like, well, you started it. You started the game. You downloaded it and you started it. And that probably is a good enough retort for 99% of cases, but they probably should be making a special case here. And CD Projekt made it seem, I think, openly like they did have some sort of agreement with Sony, but they don't. So this is a problem. And now, as I said in the news, I think that the best course for people to take is to just go to CD Projekt's website and write them a message, an email, like follow the different links there, because I think they're getting back to everyone with how you can get your money back, because they might have to do it manually. So a little bit of a nightmare scenario over there for them. But I wanted to wrap up this conversation for now. I'm sure we'll come back to this in January and later on. But Will Selfridge wrote into us and said, "Hey, CLS boys, simple question. Did we all give too much credence to CD Projekt Red over the past couple of years? I know I personally did. when the crunch stuff came up, as I assumed that since The Witcher 3 launched so well, that CD Projekt Red would pull it together, and boy, was I wrong. Maybe the lesson for all of us is to be watchful for warning signs and try not to blow too much smoke up a dev's ass for the benefit of all involved.
Well,
what do you think?
Well,
Witcher 3, I know, didn't launch great, but it didn't launch anything like this.
No, but it didn't. Witcher 3 did not launch well. Like, it's not as bad as this, but it certainly wasn't. Like, it wasn't in a state that was all that acceptable, and they managed to pull it together, which is, like, you know, good, and they have a reputation for that. I expected, you know, Cyberpunk to not be like the degree to which Cyberpunk is not finished on next gen consoles was about the degree I kind of expected it not to be finished based on how The Witcher 3 was at launch. And I kind of expected, like, all right, yeah, well, this game is not going to launch super well, but it's a CD Projekt game that eventually, in a very short time, is probably going to be pretty damn amazing. You know, that's kind of the thing that I went into it with. But the thing that we didn't really foresee was obviously them kind of hiding base versions of the consoles and not really being transparent about, like, whether or not they would run well and the state that those versions would release in. That is something that is a different thing altogether, and something that I don't necessarily think you could have predicted if you weren't paying, like, a ton of attention. Like I fully anticipated those versions of the game not to run well at all, but the degree is definitely far exceeding my expectations. So yeah, I don't know. Like, maybe there was too much credence given. I do think this game was just, like, way too overhyped in the first place.
Yeah.
Because this game always looked to me like it was probably going to be pretty good, and turns out it's better than pretty good, but it's just not ready. And I think I feel like it's always better to just err on that side of caution, where it's like, yeah, you know, I'm looking forward to this, but I'm not gonna spend years of my life, like, saving myself for this game that's probably just gonna be, you know, ultimately it just can't live up to your expectations, even if it was, you know, finished and running perfectly.
Yeah, I think our worship culture of just corporations needs to stop, generally speaking, and I don't know, unless you're worshiping Colin's Last Stand, that's fine.
Yeah,
but other than that, I don't want you to worship any other companies unless I give you the go-ahead to do so. All right, let's move on. There are a few other items here, not anything too crazy, but a few things to explore. Number 2, if you're looking for a PlayStation 4 Pro console, there's bad news. It may be discontinued. Multiple sources have pointed to a rather disconcerting message on Sony's official PlayStation Direct website, namely that the PS4 Pro is listed as out of stock, which isn't a huge surprise, but that, quote, there are currently no plans to restock this item in the future, end quote. PlayStation 4 Pro, which launched in 2016, has typically been peculiarly hard to find, and was always clearly a secondary or tertiary console for Sony, which consistently sold far more standard and slim PS4s. However, now that the PlayStation 5 has launched, it seems PS4 Pro may be a permanent afterthought for the manufacturer. Sony hasn't replied to inquiries from other sources into this, although with manufacturing so bottled up because of COVID, and with components scarce and the market for them competitive, this may have been a necessary move. It's also possible, however, that this is merely an error or oversight, though it's one that has been live on the PlayStation Direct website for some days at the time of recording. So when I first saw this, I was like, no, they're not going to discontinue the PS4 Pro, but it does say this. It has said this for like almost a week now on their website. So I think it is canceled. What do you think? Do you think it's discontinued?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if Sony's selling more base PS4s and PS4 Slims than they are Pros, and the PS5 is out now, and they could potentially free up an entire supply line, making more, you know, if they could find their hands on the components, making more PS5s. I feel like that makes more sense than to just continue making this weird kind of like bridge console that doesn't sell as much and is probably more expensive to make. Because base PS4s are probably like really cheap to make at this point. You know, I would imagine it's been 7 years. Probably fit that thing in a phone right now.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I mean, it would be shocking to me if this wasn't real, because just because it's been like out there for so long and they haven't really corrected it or said anything about it.
Yeah, it's their website, so it's not like they have to go through like partners, consumer partners, or whatever, or marketing partners. But at the same time, like they're such a big company that they would be able to get right through and get those things fixed. As we always see when things leak on Amazon France and all the other stuff, those things are pulled down in 2 seconds. So that's what's indicating to me. It's just Occam's razor. It's the simplest explanation. And so yeah, PS4 Pro seems like it might be discontinued, but hopefully we'll have more news on it. The fact that Sony isn't saying anything, the fact that the website's not being updated or whatever, seems to indicate that.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully you're not looking for one. And I would say two things about this, by the way. Number one is that PS4 Pro has always been weirdly hard to find. I don't know why, but it has never been easy to find. But the ironic thing is that I don't think Sony has sold that many of them. I think people have like drastically overestimated how many PS4 Pros have been sold. And so I think that there's a little bit of a conflict there. I don't know. I would love to know more about it. The fact that they've never broken out how many they've sold tells me that they've not sold that many. So I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, this next one here is interesting. And if not for the CD Projekt news, this might have been the biggest news of the week. So maybe it's a good thing for our show. But number 3, some weeks ago, we reported on word that Take-Two Interactive, the owner of publishing brand 2K Games, as well as Rockstar, Private Division, and others, had agreed to purchase British publisher and developer Codemasters for a hair over $800 million. However, a wrench has been thrown into the works. Codemasters is still trading hands, but it's actually going to Take-Two rival Electronic Arts instead. EA itself announced the move, indicating that it will seal the acquisition for $1.2 billion, nearly $500 million more than Take-Two's bid. The deal will be finalized early next year, and its so-called strategic rationale, in quotes. EA bid high for Codemasters for an obvious reason, its pedigree with racing games. Founded in the mid-'80s, Codemasters was once a developer and publisher of all sorts of games, but has doubled down almost completely on racing games over the last decade. Its popular annualized racing game F1 will continue under the EA moniker, while the Dirt games, Grid, Onrush, and others are also slated to transfer hands to Electronic Arts. For its part, EA was already a heavy investor in racing, particularly in the arcade subgenre with the likes of Need for Speed, and it has owned multiple racing studios over the years, most notably Criterion. Calvin Kirstein wrote into us on Patreon and says, "Hey fellas, so I'm annoyed with some of the news that came out this past week. EA waltzing in and stealing Codemasters from 2K. The deal with 2K looked great. All right, they screwed up with the WWE license, but the NBA 2K series has arguably the best visual presentation in a sports game. I was looking forward to experiencing that in F1 2021, the next Dirt, etc. Now EA has swooped in, pushed 2K out of the way, and said, here, Codemasters, here's $1 billion, an offer you can't refuse. It's like some mafia buyout bullshit. Now me and a bunch of other players are going to have to deal with a microtransaction-riddled mess of a 2021 F1 game, and the same with the next Dirt. Excuse the cynicism, but it's just so frustrating that two of my favorite franchises are likely going to be ruined. Anyway, stay safe, and thanks for your amazing podcast." So, Chris, you and I are not racing fans, but there are obviously numerous myriad racing fans out there, and some of them are really, truly distressed about this. They weren't worried about 2K acquiring Codemasters, but EA acquiring Codemasters has given them pause. What do you think about this sudden change in fortunes?
Yeah.
People at Codemasters now got $500 million more than they were originally going to get.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's good for Codemasters. I mean, props to them. You know, they're all probably having a pretty good day, a pretty good time,
pretty good life.
Yeah, pretty good existence over there at Codemasters. But
indeed,
yeah, I mean, it's no surprise that people are like not happy about EA. Like, I think EA, Activision, and to a lesser extent, but you know, still Ubisoft a little bit, are like the big three that kind of concern people. I remember when Bungie went over to Activision for when they started making their new franchise, when they started making Destiny, and that was like a big point of contention initially. I was like, oh no, this is not good. Like, that was my first instinct, and it was like, and it turns out I was kind of right, because the second they left Activision, the game got like way better, and it was totally on point. But you know, EA is definitely the one that people hate the most. Whether or not that's earned or not is like completely, you know, that's up to the individual. I think they've actually done pretty okay in recent, in like the last year or so.
Yeah, they've improved even more than that, I think.
Yeah, I think they've done well. But I do understand why people are like unhappy about this, because I actually picked up Dirt 5 not too long ago, and it's actually really good. Like, I really do like it, and I noticed immediately when I was playing it, it's like, wow, this doesn't feel like a traditional kind of modern game, and I was wondering why, and it was like, oh yeah, it's not like riddled with these like this season pass shit or like anything like that. It was just a solid racing game, and I was like, oh yeah, it's probably not going to be that way now. So I'm kind of happy I got in when I did, so I could just jump out again, but. You know, we'll see. Like, maybe EA will loosen up a bit. Although, like, you know, that's not likely to happen. I think we just saw Ubisoft add, the XP bonuses to Valhalla again.
Yeah, which I don't have a problem with it. I just don't have a problem with this. I just can't. I'm not mad about that. It's like, who cares? It's a single player game.
I'm not mad about it either, but it is just like, oh my God.
It is very Ubisoft. But
Yeah.
because it suggests that they're not balancing their games properly on purpose. And
Yeah.
I totally get that. But that it's single player and optional, that stuff doesn't bother me. It's not as egregious as the Nier Automata trophy shop, which I've never seen in any other game.
No, there are different degrees of this, just like there are with Crunch, It's
Sure.
varying degrees. But yeah, I mean, sucks for people. I don't know. I understand the concern. Happy for Codemasters, though,
It's interesting because I think that I don't know that this is a better fit for them just culturally, because EA already has a culture of racing games.
Yeah.
2K really didn't. So that's why I was more interested in like, oh, they're interested in racing. What this says is that EA is really interested in racing. And I think that that's wise. I think racing games are incredibly popular for a reason, because people really buy them. I think they're especially popular in Europe. So, which is where Codemasters is.
No, I think you're totally right on that. I do think 2K would have been a better fit, purely because I think they would have been their premier racing studio, and they would have had I think they would have been treated a lot more importantly at 2K than they probably will at EA, just because they're kind of joining a vast array of other things. I think I felt the same way with Activision. I remember when Bungie joined Activision, I was like, oh, they're just joining Call of Duty, and they're clearly not going to be Bungie would be really important to EA, or Ubisoft, where they don't really make FPSs. They have Far Cry, I guess, at Ubisoft, but they're not really out there. But you joined Activision that makes Call of Duty every year. You're gonna get treated like shit. They don't care.
It's different. It's just different. They're machines, right? Factories.
Yeah.
At least I think so. I don't mean to demean anyone that works at those places, but I agree with you. Playing a Codemasters game is probably such a more of a boutique experience in the AAA space than playing an EA game that is going to be loaded down with, or Ubisoft Uplay and all all this fucking shit. So yeah, I said that so angrily. I wasn't that angry. All right. This one's just a follow-up from last week's weird news about Vin Diesel, number 4. If you thought it was weird that Vin Diesel was starring in Studio Wildcard's upcoming video game Arc 2, you may be even more shocked by this news. Diesel is joining the team in an official capacity. As reported by website Hollywood Reporter, Diesel is now officially an executive producer at Studio Wildcard, as well as holding the role of President of Creative Convergence.
What the fuck?
President of Creative Convergence. In these positions, Diesel is set to bring his extensive production expertise as well as insights as a gamer. He's long been a vocal nerd and player of PC and console games, and Studio Wildcard claims he's a veteran of thousands of hours of the original Arc, which came out in 2017. Studio Wildcard was founded in 2014, and Arc is its only game so far, with the sequel slated for 2021 on PlayStation platforms and elsewhere. Vin Diesel is a massively popular actor, perhaps best known for his Pitch Black / Chronicles of Riddick series, as well as the Fast and the Furious, and the Chronicle of Riddick games, which are fucking dope. Vin Diesel has a lot of credibility in gaming compared to almost anyone in Hollywood. So it is interesting that he's joining them, and we kind of do make fun of the EP moniker because anyone's an EP. There are guys that are EPs of 17 shows at a time because they're just involved in some way. So in television. So anyway, I wouldn't read too much into that, but Vin Diesel is now the president of Creative Convergence at Wildcard Studio Wildcard. I'm sorry.
That is such a wildly. Yeah. I mean, good for him, but that's so obviously a made up title,
Oh, definitely. I think it has to do with their game, and then they're doing that anime, right, or whatever, that animated series. So
yeah.
I think it has something to do with that. But I guess he's a huge fan of Arc. I had no idea. Good for him.
Yeah.
This one I hadn't seen reported almost anywhere, and I get it, but we're a really nerdy show, so we're going to get into this shortly. Number 5, a developer acquisition happened quietly over the past week, but it's an acquisition worth reporting on. High Voltage Software, an Illinois-based studio founded nearly 3 decades ago, has been purchased by Keyword Studios. Keyword Studios is a for-hire development firm that works exclusively on other publishers and developers' projects, clients ranging from EA and Ubisoft to Square Enix and Sega. And thus its acquisition of High Voltage makes a great deal of sense. High Voltage has made its own games over the years. It's perhaps best known for most recently for its Conduit FPS games on Wii, released in 2009 and 2011. But it has long been a development partner to the likes of WB, Activision, Deep Silver, Epic, and others, having worked in a background capacity on Mortal Kombat, Injustice, Fortnite, and more. The deal cost Keyword Studios nearly $24 million in cash, as well as another $16.5 million in performance-related targets. So I haven't really heard much from High Voltage since the Conduit, but they have existed in a background capacity. They work really closely, specifically with, because they are in Illinois, so they work specifically closely with NetherRealm, which is in the same region. But yeah, they're off the market, and they're working with Keyword Studios, which is a team you will never hear about because they're one of the studios that exclusively works for others. So anyway, I thought it was an interesting piece of news. I saw it on gamesindustry.biz. I didn't see anyone reporting on it. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah.
And finally, number 6, Chris, is a wrap-up.
Ooh.
Website Komatsu reports arcade shooter Readout Space Assault is coming to PlayStation 4 on January 22nd. Hard as Nails 2D platformer Super Meat Boy Forever comes to PS4 in January of 2021. Puzzle platformer Uterograd comes to PlayStation VR in early 2021. Roguelite platformer Skull the Hero Slayer comes to PS4 in early 2021. So-called camping, I'm sorry, that's misspelled there, but it says so-called camping game Cozy Grove is coming to PS4 in the first half of 2021. It actually says camming game, which doesn't sound like something they would allow on PlayStation.
Yeah, definitely not.
Action RPG Ender Lilies Quietus of the Nights is coming to PlayStation 4 in the second quarter of 2021, and Beat 'em Up Toonch comes to PS4 at an undetermined point in 2021. The website also reports multiplayer game Conan Chop Chop has been delayed for a 4th time and will now come to PS4 in early 2021, while adventure game Where the Heart Leads has been delayed and will now come to PS4 in the second quarter of 2021. The official PlayStation blog reports action RPG Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthblood is coming to both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 on February 4th, early next year. The subscription service HBO Max is now officially available to download on PlayStation 5. Website Push Square reports that JRPG Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, due out in 2022, is coming natively to PlayStation 5 in addition to PS4. And Terminator Resistance, first launched on PS4 in late 2019, is coming to PS5 on March 26, 2021. The website also reports that puzzle game Humanity is still coming to PS4, but will now launch in 2021. And finally, Yacht Club Games has announced that Cyber Shadow, the Ninja Gaiden-like 2D platformer it's publishing on behalf of Mechanical Head Studios, is coming to PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 on January 26, 2021. Greg Rygar, I love that name, wrote in and said, "Hey fellas, Cyber Shadow has a release date of January 26, 2021. Finally, a cyber game that looks beautiful. The gameplay mechanics look awesome and the cutscene pixel art is incredible. Is this a game you will check out at launch?" Oh, yes. Of course I will. If people are interested, if people like Ninja Gaiden like I do, the old Tecmo NES ones, you gotta go look at this game. Cyber Ninja. It is fucking dope. It looks so good. Can't wait to play it. Wanted to give it a shout out. Have you seen the trailer for this?
For Cyber Shadow? Yeah. It reminded me a lot of The Messenger.
Yeah, it does look like The Messenger.
So I was like totally all about it because I love The Messenger, and I thought it was a sequel to The Messenger, honestly. Like when I first saw it, I was like, oh shit. But it's not, and I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, it looks awesome. This is a game that Yacht Club is publishing. They founded and funded it. Very wise, because if I saw that game, I would have gladly funded it too. All right. It's time to talk about our intriguing games of the week. I kick it over to you, Chris. What should people check out this week?
Yeah, so the one that jumped out to me was a game that actually was kind of shadow dropped during the Game Awards. And they had a trailer, I think, during the pre-show. It's called Shady Part of Me. I think it's from Focus Home Interactive. I'm fairly certain that that's true. And it's this kind of like a mix of like, it's a 2D platformer, but it's also like a 3D platformer where there's like a brother's Tale of Two Sons kind of angle to it, where it's like you play as a girl and you also play as her shadow. And you kind of have to like manipulate the world to kind of alter the shadow's pathway. It looks cool, and like the art style is really cool, and like it's about like dreams and like nightmare escapes, and it just looks really really interesting. It looks like it's well made. And it's probably the one that stuck out to me the most. There's been a couple of these kinds of games, like involving like shadow platforming. I think was Contrast the other one that I'm thinking of. Yeah,
Contrast was a launch game on PS4. Yeah, Compulsion Games. Yep, which now are owned by Microsoft.
Yeah, so weird. But yeah, it's kind of like that. It's but like the art style is very. I really enjoyed it from what I saw, so I would recommend that. Looks cool.
Yeah, I was looking just at the Wikipedia for the game as you were talking about it. Interestingly, Hannah Murray is the lead voice role in the game, it says, and Hannah Murray is Gilly from Game of Thrones, for anyone that remembers that show, and I'm sure you do. All right, and yeah, it is published by Focus Home, as you said. Very good. It's from a French studio called Deux Deuxièmes. I'm probably butchering that. I took French for years, and I still can't speak it. All right. I am going to break the rule a little bit here, the rules, and go with Shakedown Hawaii, which I talked about earlier. It's because if it's a similar thing, it came out of nowhere. We didn't really have time to prepare for it, and I'm really blown away by it. Also, there's just not that much coming out right now because of the holidays. So
yeah.
You guys heard you heard me talk at the top about Shakedown Hawaii. I really recommend it. It is so unique and interesting. I think that people will really enjoy it, and it's available on PS4 and Vita as well, so you don't have to play it on PS5. All right, Chris, tradition dictates that we end every episode of Sacred Symbols with 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience on Patreon at patreon.com/ColinsLastStand. We'll begin with Derek O, who wrote in and said, if Sony named their studios with the same logic Microsoft used to name 343 and the Coalition, what would they be called? This is a good question.
That's a good question. So that needs to be unpacked a little bit, I feel like, because like, what does that mean? So it's like 343 is specifically a villain. So that's very, I remember always thinking that's like, oh, you named your studio that's meant to steward this beloved franchise after the villain of the franchise. That's cool. It's very good idea. And the Coalition is what? The Coalition of Ordered Governments, which is like the thing that the Gears guys work for. So it needs to be like established in like the lore. So I imagine like Naughty Dog. Well, it depends on like what game they start with, right? So if we're starting with Last of Us, I'd imagine like, I don't know, Fireflies.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Firefly Studio or something like that would be one. Yeah.
Or it depends on what games like you want to start with these studios.
Yeah, I was thinking that's true. I was thinking with Sucker Punch like something like Choice Games or something like that, since they until Ghost of Tsushima, that was what they were all about with Infamous. And it's actually interesting. I because it's funny. I wanted to bring this up because, as people know, I just hate the motif of naming those studios those things. I just hate it. And I'm so glad Sony doesn't, although Sony's got its own boring ass naming convention because half their studios are just named Japan Studio and London Studio and
Sony Santa Monica.
Yeah, it's boring. It's like, it would be nice to get some new names, but thus that is the way it goes. And
well, the initiative is not necessarily. I don't know, like, because they announced that they're making Perfect Dark now,
right?
Which was pretty fucking cool. But like, I don't think the initiative has anything to do with Perfect Dark as like a word.
I don't think so either. Because they were founded before they even knew what they were going to make. Obviously, they were. It's funny that you brought up Perfect Dark. I thought that was a little disappointing that they were making Perfect Dark.
I was super happy about it.
It seemed like most people were,
because like Perfect Dark is like one of those games that's like it's an early, like it's a rare game. It's like a late rare game, and it was really cool. But it's also one of those games that it's a game that people have a lot of connection to, but people wouldn't mind seeing it like completely reimagined. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like one of the things that I like about it. It's that like it's people like it, but they don't like it so much that they want to preserve every fucking aspect of it. It's just like, hey, look at this cool universe and just fuck around in it. We could make. I have no idea what that game's gonna be. Like, it could be a first person shooter. I doubt. I actually don't think so. But
yeah, third person you would think, right?
But I don't know. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I like Perfect Dark on N64. I was a little disappointed in that. Also, I was surprised. I don't think that leaked, which is shocking.
Yeah, that actually is shocking. I hope they actually go through with it this time, because I was actually looking forward to Phantom Dust too, and that never happened.
That's true. Yeah, the initiative would be in a lot of trouble if they weren't working on this game, because they've been just doing this for a couple of years now. It was also announced, by the way, since we're talking about Xbox, that I think Fable guys just hired their writer, so that game's a ways out still.
Oh, yeah.
As well. All right. Zach Wishnuff wrote into us and said, C-Man, how easy is it for PlayStation and Sony more broadly to leverage their other business units across the company? For example, is it easy for PlayStation to get the rights to music in Sony Music's catalog to use in PlayStation's games? Could Sony Pictures provide movie clips for PlayStation to use in its games? So I wanted to bring this up. We don't have to talk about it very long, but this is kind of a new thing for Sony, because the One Sony thing, the so-called One Sony idea, which I think goes back to even the Kutaragi days and stuff like that, but it's something that's never really been followed through on. And I think Kaz Hirai was someone that was really trying to kind of pull the One Sony One Sony card. In other words, like, why aren't we more cooperative? Because the company actually internally was notoriously competitive between the various verticals, which was weird. And they've managed, I think, to kind of fix this. And I think the proof's in the pudding with Spider-Man. in some way in managing to get that game and how big that's been for the PlayStation brand. I mean, Chris, think about how PS5 would be fine and PS4 would have been fine without Spider-Man, but it would have been less. They would have had less to show.
Oh yeah.
If not for that. So we see the biggest, in other words, we see the biggest game arguably, or one of the PlayStation's biggest games come from the fruit of that labor of finally cooperating with each other internally, which they weren't doing. So it's cool to see, isn't it? I mean, Sony has so much access, even seeing like a Walkman or seeing something like it's not quite the same, but seeing the Vita in The Last of Us Part 2 was kind of a cool thing. Although it's the same, they're kind of the same department.
The thing that's kind of confusing about that is like, so does Sony own Spider-Man as a media figure? Like,
no, I think they own the rights to. I think Sony Pictures owns the rights to use him in film.
Right.
It's very similar, and that was, I think, through the Marvel disbursement when they were in a lot of trouble, and so I think that they just leveraged that relationship with Marvel to kind of open the door for PlayStation. It's something that wouldn't have necessarily happened.
That makes sense.
Ago.
Yeah. No, I do think that was hugely important, and I think it's I don't know if it's really all that necessary to use like movie clips in PlayStation games. I think it'd be really distracting. But I think they could be a little bit more cooperative than they currently are. Certainly.
Yeah, I think seeing just a few Easter eggs here and there are cool. Like seeing Sony products, and you would occasionally, like I said, see a Walkman or a Sony CD player or a Vio computer or something. And I think that that's cool. And PlayStation products, I think that kind of stuff's neat. Yeah, the movie clip stuff, that might be like a cool Easter egg in like a background of a third person open world game where there's like movie clips from Sony Pictures playing on people's TVs in their houses or something. But that's like just a weird Easter egg thing. That's probably not even worth the trouble. David Colin Copeland wrote into us and said, "Hey, Poopalots. I'm playing Cyberpunk right now, and just a week or two ago, you were having a discussion on mechanics in games that are meant to convey realism, but are just annoying. This was in reference to the controls in Shadow of the Colossus, which I disagree with, but that's neither here nor there. My least favorite realism gimmick is the one where you carry so much that you become encumbered and can't walk. In Cyberpunk, every enemy drops a gun, so I grab the guns, then I become encumbered. I can't stand when games do this, like Skyrim, where you're allowed to pick up every little thing, no matter how useless, and then you end up becoming too heavy. It's not realistic to pick up every gun from every enemy, so why bother with the mechanic at all? Why not streamline the game so you don't need the mechanic? Your thoughts? Or any other mechanics like this that grind your gears?" I actually kind of hate this too. I think it depends on the game, but encumbrance. How do you feel about encumbrance in a game?
I mean, I don't like it, but I think that's kind of the point, is that you're supposed to be thinking about the things you're picking up. It's not like, because otherwise you're just kind of, running through every room, pressing triangle in every corner of the room, like just picking up a bunch of, like, that was one of the things in The Last of Us that I remember, just like, okay, it's another room, I'm going to like scour the outline of the room and just spam triangle a bunch, because I just didn't have to think about what it was that I was picking up. I just knew that I needed everything in there. Whereas opposed to like an RPG, you kind of want the player kind of looking around and thinking like, all right, how much can I carry? Do I need this? It is a little bit more, like, there are definitely some games that go too far with it. There are definitely games where it's like you can only carry like 6 things, and it's like, what the fuck is this? But I think for the most part, a lot of those games are pretty generous with the amount of stuff that you can carry, and a lot of games like that give you options to carry more, which has like, the player kind of thinking about like what they value most in the experience. It's like, okay, do I want to be a little bit faster, or do I want to be able to carry more things so I don't have to necessarily delegate my time between deciding what I should pick up from any given loot pool? I think those mechanics are really important, as much as I understand that they're kind of tedious. But, I just can't even imagine what my inventory in Skyrim would look like if I could just carry everything. Like it would be a fucking disaster. And that game would have probably been like a nightmare for me to play if I just was allowed to pick every single thing up.
It does beg the question though, like why in Bethesda Game Studio games, for instance, why do they make it so that you can pick up like every empty bottle and every useless thing? It's like, it is kind of fucking stupid. It's not. It always annoyed me. I'm like, why are you letting me pick this shit up at all?
I agree. I do think though it's for systems that, because games like Bethesda RPGs, like, as buggy and like, not fantastic as they can be, are very I would argue very feature rich in the amount of things that you can do in them. And like, you're probably like me, right, where you don't really craft a lot.
No, I'm not crazy about it.
Yeah, you're not crafting, you're not like smelting cups into like iron to forge things, but like that's a thing that you can do. And I think that's kind of the reason why that's in there. It's like, hey, you can pick up this cup and that'll give you like 1 iron and you can like kind of like put that into something else. Like I never bothered with that shit, so I just didn't pick up a lot of that nonsense unless it was something that I thought could be valuable to sell to a vendor so I could like buy more shit. But you know, it's weird because there are some systems in games like that we just ignore, so we just kind of see as pointless, even though they do serve a purpose to players with, you know, different inclinations in how they interact with that world. It's a big game design question, but like I don't necessarily mind that stuff. And I guess with like the picking up guns things in Cyberpunk, I'm just so used to Destiny, where you know you get a gun kind of all the time and you're just kind of used to like, all right, go into my inventory, break this down for materials, and then, you know, I can use the components to upgrade my good shit. So I'm used to very much like looking at all the guns in my inventory and just seeing which ones are good and deleting the ones that aren't good and like getting components for them. I'm just sort of used to that, so it doesn't bother me. But the thing that does bother me the most, as far as like a realism gimmick, is especially specifically in like first person games where my character has to slide into some arbitrary, like this arbitrary animation to do something very simple. Like I think of, I kind of think of Far Cry when I think of this, even though like I think that's one of the few games that does it like kind of well because it's kind of the point. But there are games that I'll play like it's an FPS and I'm having a great time, and then I got to press a button to go through a door, and then I interact with the button. And then my camera suddenly goes like real smooth, and it like looks down at the button, and my hand slowly goes up to it, and I like put my hand on the scanner, and then it scans, and then my hand goes away, and then I'm given control back. It's like I don't need these weird animations to just pull me at it. Yo, if I want to open the door, just let me hold square to open the door and have the door open in front of me. Like I don't need this weird. Like I hate that shit.
Well, fair enough. Yeah, as far as this. I don't know. I think this is an interesting question because it goes back to, we should really do a Sacred Symbols Plus about all this stuff, because about just kind of like the various slices that make up a game and how you kind of put them together into something coherent. And yeah, I personally find the entire crafting thing usually very overwhelming.
Yeah.
Unless I was playing Ys 8 recently on Vita, and that had a more coherent crafting system because you're just collecting shit tons of items and you're making things that aren't very important and you're upgrading weapons. But when I feel like it's really important for me to be paying attention to this and I'm not, and then I get stuck on that. And so I don't know. But generally speaking, I remember playing Fallout 3 for the first time when I was writing the strategy guide in 2008. I had never really played a game like that before until then. And I remember picking up everything and being like, why can't I? You realize like, okay, I'm carrying too much weight, but then I'm like, do I need all of this shit? And then for like 10 hours, I'm like, yeah, I need every empty metal cat food can that I'm finding. You know, it's like, eventually I just learned how to play, but I was always confused because I didn't feel like it added to the realism. And as I recall, it actually adds a great deal to the RAM strain in those games as well, which was making a game like Skyrim in 2011 not run properly on PS3. So that's neither here nor there. But thanks for writing in, David Colin Copeland. Last name shared with one of the great drummers of all time. Nicholas Schaeffler wrote in and said, hey, gents, I have a weird question. When I play RPGs that allow me to select gender, I always choose male, as I am a male. But I've noticed that most games journalists pick female. Is there a reason for this? No judgment, just curiosity. I thought Colin may know more about the psyche of games journalists. I think they usually pick women because that's the closest they'll ever get to one. No, I'm only kidding. Who am I to judge? I was in the industry forever. That was a funny joke, though, I thought. Yeah. I don't know why that is. I don't want to say always, but I typically choose a male because I just feel like I'm a man. I just feel like that's what I would do. You know, I'd feel like if I was like messing with the sliders and the character creator of a woman and she was like in her bra and panties and I was like and someone walked in, I'd feel a little weird. So there's also that component.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you play male or female?
I don't know if I really have a specific thing that I default to. I just sort of like whatever I feel would seem cool in the moment. That's like in Skyrim, I was a male, and I think in Fallout I was a male, but in Cyberpunk I was a woman just because it's like I feel like punk women look cooler. Just generally, like I feel like they have better hairstyles and shit, and like tattoos look better. It's like I don't know, like male V just looks really fucking generic. And it just kind of looks like, you know what it is, honestly, too? I think it's the cover of Cyberpunk that kind of like doesn't make me want to play as the guy, because it's the BioShock Infinite cover exactly.
Yeah,
like
sure.
it's just a guy, with a gun, and it's like, all right. It's actually Shepard, FemShep 2 is like way better than normal Shepard in Mass Effect, I thought. As far as like the performance,
the voice acting is way better.
Yeah,
yeah,
and that's kind of the thing too. It's like sometimes the voice will put me off. Like I remember, like I saw so much Cyberpunk footage of like male V, and he just sounded really kind of generic tough guy, and I was like, I don't want to be listening to that the whole time. So like Cyberpunk right now, I'm a woman, but like I'll probably play through again as like a corpo fucking male or something. I don't know. It's an RPG. It's an RPG, so you could just kind of do whatever you want. In Destiny, I have like a hunter that's a woman and like a titan that's a man, and like it's just whatever, you know. I don't really put too much thought into it.
We brought this up last week, but it's weird that in Cyberpunk you can't change your gender in the middle of the game, because that would seem like something that would be allowable in that world. But well, I guess not.
I don't know. I haven't thought about any of that since I started, but it does make sense. Yeah,
I did hear that there were like a shit ton of dildos in the game, and that they actually patched some of them out.
Oh, really?
I did read that.
I didn't see them.
Yeah. All right. Connor wrote in and said, all right, gentlemen, let's talk about Mass Effect. Oh, we were.
Oh, yeah.
How would you feel if BioWare took a page from Sucker Punch and canonized one of Mass Effect 3's 3 endings based on player data? I asked because the recent teaser trailer seems to depict a post-destroy ending Milky Way, given the several shots of the Reaper corpses. And he says, secondly, how would you feel if player choices from the upcoming remaster could be carried over to this new project? Thank you for your hard work and companionship. Be kind to yourselves. Thank you, Connor. So as we do come up on the 8th anniversary of Mass Effect 3, we do think back to the ending controversy, which was actually a controversy that engulfed me, as some people might know.
Yeah.
And I feel like they are going to have to make a choice like this. So what he's saying here is that Sucker Punch had to eventually canonize an ending of Infamous. I think it was Infamous 2's good ending. And it is a necessary thing for them to do, you would presume, if they were going to continue like the story of Milky Way and Seven and the post-Reaper kind of reality. And maybe they could do it on player data, but I wanted to read this especially, Chris, because Connor is bringing up the point that I have actually been stewing on. Is it possible that save data in the new ones will somehow interact with the new game? I feel like there's a distinct possibility it will, even if it comes from a patch where like they have no idea how it's going to work, but maybe they can retroactively patch the collection to somehow have some sort of resonance with the new game. Do you think that that's something that's possible?
I think it's possible. I think it would make, but that's kind of the thing. It's like the teaser trailer that we saw is very clearly already like, at least conceptually, that game exists in some form. So like to kind of carry over player data from a collection that isn't even really announced formally in a real way. Like I think there was a trailer for it or something, right? There was like a brief trailer for it. Was it announced properly?
Yeah. Well, no, they said Mass Effect will continue, and then they showed it looked like Liara, but I don't think it is. I think it's just one of the Asari like picking up an N7 armor, and that was it.
Oh, I think it is Liara actually.
Oh,
because she lives for like hundreds of years. But
sure.
But yeah, I don't know. Like I don't see that necessarily happening. I think the collection is just a collection, and I think this kind of new whatever it is they're doing is probably like going to be a fresh start, and they're probably going to canonize one of the endings. Because I feel like they have to if they're really gonna, because you don't want to like jump into the new Mass Effect and be like, oh well, you have to play these 3. You know, it's like
yeah, but I do understand that, but I was saying more of like an option. Like you didn't have to carry your save data from the games through to each other, but you could.
Yeah,
you could just start Mass Effect 3 or Mass Effect 2 without that and be totally fine.
No, that's true. That's what I did. Like I didn't really fuck with Mass Effect 1. I thought it like played and ran pretty terribly, so I just couldn't do it even back then. But
well, it'll be interesting to see how they fix it in the new one if they do.
Yeah, hopefully they do.
All right. Well, yeah, to Connor's, I think Chris already said it, Connor, but yeah, they presumably have to choose one of the endings, but soon we'll all get to go back to Mass Effect again. If we want to. Yeah. I personally don't. Although I did play the original Mass Effect earlier this year again on PS3. So that was the first time in like 12 years. So.
Yeah. I would love to go back to Mass Effect 2 again. I really love that game.
Well, soon enough. Reed Whittle has an easy one for us to clean up here at the end. He says, hope you're both doing well. I have a question aimed more at Colin regarding PlayStation Studios. I noticed both Demon's Souls and Returnal via the recent trailer are displaying the PlayStation Studios splash screen. I thought this was reserved only for PlayStation Studios, first-party studios. I even checked the website, and sure enough, it only shows the first-party stuff. Am I wrong, or could this signify that both of those developers are about to come on board? Sort me out, Colin. No, Reed, it doesn't necessarily indicate that, although I think those are the two most likely targets of Sony, which is respectively Bluepoint and Housemarque. But no, Sony had said, if you remember, Reed, and you don't, but I'll remind you that they want the PlayStation Studios logo, that new kind of splash screen, to encompass all of their first and second party games and kind of treat them the same. We'll know the difference between them as informed consumers, but most people have no idea Demon's Souls was made by whoever, Bluepoint and the outside. But Sony did produce that game, and they are producing and funding Returnal. So that's why you're seeing those logos. So don't be confused. This is very similar to how it used to say Sony Computer Entertainment Presents. It would say that before first party and second party games, and it's the same thing. Nothing's changed there. But thank you for your question, Reed. Chris, that's all we have for this episode of Sacred Symbols. It's over now.
Yeah, it's a very Cyberpunk dominated week.
It is. It is. Thank God, actually, in some way, because this is going to be a shorter episode than usual, but I think it would have been even shorter if not for that. So, but Chris, I'll talk to you again in real time because we're going to record another episode before Christmas. But Merry Christmas to you, and to your family, and or Feliz Navidad, as your people might say.
I do like that song, honestly.
Yeah, me too. And Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year to everyone out there. We appreciate your love, kindness, and support of our show, whether on free feeds or on Patreon. And we'll see you next time for more Sacred Symbols. Until then, goodbye.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product of and a registered trademark of Colin's Last Stand, LLC, and is recorded from Richmond, Virginia, and Burbank, California, USA. This show is conceived by, is written by, and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Chris Raygun. You can find me on Twitter at NoTaxation and on Instagram at CLS Moriarty. Chris is on Twitter at Chris R. Gunn and on Instagram at Chris_Ray_Gun. Sacred Symbols is edited by Dustin Furman. To message the show online, please use Patreon's DM service. As you know, all of Colin's Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/Colin's Last Stand. The following names are at the producer level or higher on Patreon, and we are eternally grateful for your kindness, generosity, and fandom. Nick DeMarco, Andrew Morgan, Gregory Slavinsky, Stephen Nieder, Ross Marenka, Zach Parsley, Miguel A. Brewer, Morgan Ashley, Ben, Azan, Michael Vecchio, Joey Finelli, Jerome Ferreira, SL the FMA, Ryan T. Mandel, Jorge Palomino, Enrique Perez, Don Lee, Daniel Diamore, Brad Cooley, Jeremy Key, Patrick Leslie, Homeworld Hub, Dennis Barker, William Holbert, Chris Buston, Betty Ann Moriarty, Colin Jewell, Daniel Johnson, Zach Bonham, an Unofficial Controller Podcast, Jay Getter, Vexius, Jeff Mercado, Galja of Fortuna, Boots, Megadet, Saul Balcazar, Raul Melendez, Jackson Vernon, Eric Harden, Matt Martin, Rodney Coleman, Chris Moore, Auntie Kinnanen, Taylor Barkley, Chris Galvin, Ryan Murdoch, Mason Cadillac, Ollie Fritz, Chris Buston, Zach Allum, George Anthony Nunez, Kyle Hagel, Colin Love, Daryl E. Naiman, Ryan R. Kittredge, Toby Ryland, Michael S., Damon Weathers, Richter 86, Barrett Boswell, Christopher DeVio, Kevin Kamaki, Blake Israel, Sean Mason, Josh Gravelick, Brian Chan, Organic Produce, Isaac Wastman, Mubarak, Carlos Algrit, McDog 18, Richard Hebert III, Miranda Grubba, Ray Leja, David Castanez, Donnie Nolan, Josh Yeager, Matthew Cooper, Toothless Gibbon, Martin Beck, Gavin, Joey Andrzejczyk, Nathan R., Joe McPartlin, Christopher Moore, Lawrence F. Prokop, Colin Davenport, Eric Finkenbeiner, Lou and Ray Loper, Dylan Burns, John Schultz, David Chestnut, Yusuf, Anton K., Alan Tremblay, Tyler Bello, Tony Zuniga, Sean Battershaw, Max Lazos, Robbie Hensley, Alex Cabrera, Lennon Brixey, Corey Wyatt, James Kinslow III, Hugo's Desk, Peter Reynolds, William O'Carroll, JCS0828, Jesper Jansen, Phil Crone, Throw 7, Adam Nix, Josh McKinney, Michael Gates, Alex Gates, Sean Chandler, Petro Rose, Gio Corsi, Greg Lotta, Gerald Pennington, Justin Wagaman, Paul Joyce, Chad Lewis, Todd Paxson, Joshua Smallwood, Shane Reum, Spencer Brand, John Cordero, Greg Juliffs, Keith A. Lewis, Marius Garson Peterson, Tyler Harris, Matthew Purdue, Toby Shootman, Patrick Harper, Mad Mock Media, Jonathan Rice, and Casual Misfits Gaming.